Hello, you're watching news from Kazakhstan, and I'm Nurbek Savitakhunov. At the trial over Vladimir Kozlov, Serik Sapargali, and Akshanat Aminov, witness interrogations continue for the prosecution. On Friday, August 31st, Ayman Ongarbayeva, a former civil activist of oil workers' protest movement, was summoned to court.
Compared to her former allies Natalia Azhagalieva and Ayzhangul Amirova, her performance was not as intense, emotional and long. It took a couple of hours for both parties to figure out whose side she's on. The woman's speech was no longer as bright and clear as it was during the oil workers' strike. Here's what she was saying shortly before the tragic events of 2011. The rumors are that I am instigating people to stand up and pursue the labor dispute. I responded that not only the people, but even the dogs will not listen to me. Everyone here stands for their own selves and their money. However, Ayman Ongarbayeva, along with her former allies, tried to present herself as a victim in the courtroom on Friday, saying that she could have been used by people of Kozlov in their own interests. Following the introductory part of the speech, mainly regarding the nature of spontaneous strikes among the workers, she started to defending herself by switching to the offensive side. She kept confusing her testimonies and didn't mention any names. She spoke on behalf of the people, which Venera Sarsenbina, Kozlov's attorney, asked the judge to pay attention to. The defense reminded the witness that she's in the court and therefore her answers should be specific and short without rhetorical thoughts. I was among the people and therefore my testimonies include their words. The questioning of Ongarbayeva continued in the same key. Personally, I didn't hear you calling for the overthrow of power, but your people kept saying that Vladimir Kozlov is the head of Halyk Maydani and Alga party, and I believe that they were carrying out the direct order of their leader. She replied to defendant's question. When Kozlov asked her how did she know that he was the head of Halyk Maydani, Ongarbayeva responded that she didn't remember and that Azhagalieva should be able to answer this question. She talked about her colleagues in the same ungrateful manner who were vigorously defending workers' rights. In the court, she stated that Roza Tulitaeva, convicted for organizing the unrest, has never been an activist and Talgat Saktaganov never had the leadership skills. Therefore, calling him a defendant of the oil workers' rights would be a mistake. Here's another quote from the questioning of Ongarbayeva. No one is going to dismiss us and we should stand up to the end. Did you say that? This was extracted from the indictment. Is that true? I don't remember. Ongarbayeva used to be a worker of Ozenmonagas and was one of the civil activists among Zhanaozen oil workers. She was arrested for her views on January 2012. She was detained by the investigation authorities and spent over 4 months in the detention center. Later, along with other activists following the act of repentance under Article 65, she was given a status of a witness.
On Friday, Bolat Atabayev was called by the trial court as witness, but taking into consideration his current visit to Germany, the judge Murzabekov allowed the prosecutors to read out his testimonies obtained during the investigation. No discrediting information was revealed in his testimonies. In them, Bolat Atabayev admits that his consciousness forced him to visit the oil workers. Talgat Saktaganov is the next one on the list of witnesses to be called by the court. Meanwhile, jurists, political scientists, and psychoanalysts debated the appearance of experts at the oppositionist trial who assessed the defendant's speeches, analyzed certain leaflets, and described their psychological state. Opinions are explored in the next report.
This greeting gesture, the hand clenched in fists, may become something political Vladimir Kozlov will regret in the future, because all his words, conversations, and perhaps gestures during the trial of his case are considered to be evidence, and his hand, raised in a greeting with a fist, may be interpreted differently. All rise. The trial had been on and in hearing for 14 days now. At the end of last week, the specialists presented the results of psychological and philological evaluations, conversations, leaflets, psychological profiles. All this can help confirm or refute what Kozlov is being accused of. On the first day of the trial, it was allowed to film only for the first 10 minutes, and then absolute ban on any audio and video recording was introduced. Everyone who is interested to know about the evidence produced by the investigation to prove the defendant's guilt turns to the internet publications. As it turns out, there are no names of witnesses, no evidence, just conclusions of experts, psychologists, philologists, political scientists. Almost all of them are from the Almaty Forensic Center. In your conclusion, you're talking about the leaflets, but these are not leaflets. There are specific addresses to a specific person. Did you arrive to the conclusion that they were leaflets by yourself, or this is something the investigators told you? This is the form of the object presented. It is determined by philologists. This is a question to them. You're saying possibly such an image of authorities was created, or it was indeed created. Possibly. You said there are no data in psychological theory that determine the influence of individual depending on how many times he read the text. You misunderstood. Everything depends on the person's individual characteristics. I've written your words down. This is exactly what you stated, that there are no such data in psychology. How exactly any psychologist's reactions take place after the first, second, and third reading of the text. Are you familiar with such authors, for example, psychologist Pocheptsev? There are a lot of theories in psychology. This is not the first time that experts from the Almaty Forensic Center provide evaluations like this. In 2005, the same experts were called for the hearing on closure of Democratic Choice of Kazakhstan party. Then, in the aftermath of the parliamentary elections, DCK leaders during their party convention adopted a political statement in which they declared the new Majlis illegitimate and called the citizens for peaceful actions of civil disobedience. For that, in January next year, a specialized economic court made a decision to close down the party. The main pretext for elimination was the psychological evaluation that recognized the statement as a threat to national security. If anyone remembers that court decision, they also had experts there, and then the experts did something that doesn't make sense from the philological point of view. They evaluated every single word separately. So they have evaluated separately the word actions, civic, and disobedience. I was present at the hearing. I know what I'm talking about. The same experts from the Almaty Forensic Center read the results of the psychological and linguistic evaluation of the most recent criminal trial of Vadim Kuramshin. The human rights activist remembers the chief expert Nagima Abisheva. According to Vadim, in his case, just like in political Vladimir Kozlov's case, there was no evidence providing his guilt, and the evaluation, like in many other trials, was supposed to be the end point of the prosecutor's side. I would say that the expert was whirling like an adder on the hot pan, trying to produce at least something to support the charges, but it should be pointed out that there were none. The psychologist who conducted the psychological evaluation didn't say anything good about the defendants either. His presentations in various workshops, interviews, his political activity on the whole did not give him the satisfaction that a real politician would experience. Low intellectual potential, lack of classical higher education. Nevertheless, it is necessary to point out the high level of self-education. The internal world of the defendant, his motives absolutely do not correspond to the personality involved in political activity. The defendant is most apparently a bohemian personality. Russian psychologist Alexander Kantor doesn't agree with this evaluation. His article on the personality of Vladimir Putin created a lot of discussions in its time. However, he believes this evaluation of personality of a common politician, and for the court, for that matter, is not correct. And in the context of this case, in his opinion, the evaluation looks weird. It is strange, since then do psychologists decide who should be involved in political activities or not? Even if someone is bohemian or was an average student at school, do we lack politicians that behave in weird ways sometimes? There are a lot of psychological theories. In the current Aktau trial, the prominent human rights activist Evgeny Zhovtis believes that the consequences of the pronounced psychological and linguistic evaluation can be only guessed. But one thing is clear, that in the absence of any evidence to prove guilt of politicians Vladimir Kozlov and Serik Sapargali, anything will do. All this is quite funny and sad. The most interesting thing is that the prosecution side has absolutely no evidence. All they can put into the verdict is these evaluations. This is why both the court and the prosecutor's office tried to negate all questions raising doubts about all these evaluations, because I think that these evaluations will be chosen as main arguments.
The released human rights activist Vadim Kuramshin made a statement on Friday saying that he is ready to do anything to make the state pay attention and stop killing and imprisoning civil activists. According to him, the time has come for Kazakh authorities to start paying attention to the life of ordinary citizens. No sooner had the public activist been released that he was faced with new challenges. Kuramshin says that the National Press Club refused to host his conference. That is why he had to meet the journalists in Leave Housing for the People movement office. Only representatives from independent mass media made it to the conference. During the briefing, Kuramshin told about an unusual phone call he received in January. During that call, the head of Nurotan Party committee informed the activist that an honored person from the parliament wanted to join his committee on defending the prisoners' rights. Kuramshin assumes that he was probably referring to the president's daughter, Nazarbayeva. It was not before I spent 7 months in jail that Dariga Nazarbayeva finally noticed me and started some sort of dialogue. My fight wasn't in vain, because I managed to attract the attention to myself and get partial support from Dariga Sultanovna. The first thing that we want to ask Dariga is to take a look at other activists who are being persecuted nowadays. Head of State Nursultan Nazarbayev will run for presidency in the next elections. This opinion was voiced at an online conference at guljan.org website by presidential advisor Yermuhamet Yirtizbayev. Moreover, the next presidential campaign will be more intense, says the high-ranking official. Financial capacities of the candidates will play a key role in the process. At the same time, Mr. Yirtizbayev did not exclude the possibility that the cabinet might be sacked in the nearest future, but added that the final decision will be made by the president himself. I spoke with the president on this issue, his plans for upcoming 10 years, and he said that the issue is closed until 2016. In general, the industrial and innovative program for upcoming 10 years is already designed. If he will have strength and will, I do not exclude a possibility that he might run for presidency again. The fall season in Kazakhstan might possibly become volatile and unstable in both political and social terms. According to research conducted by Rating.kz agency, the country could possibly face clashes between different interest groups, terrorist acts, an increase of social conflicts, and even the loss of the president's legal capacity. At the same time, mass media and the internet community more often note the special role given to head of the presidential administration, Aslan Musin.
Gloomy forecasts from analytical experts came quite unexpected. Social protests, political provocations and incriminating evidences, terrorism and unrest within the authorities is only a few items in the list of surprises for the political fall. Upon the investigation, the Rating.kz agency says that the situation could get worse, including the chances for the president becoming incapable. The political experts noted the fact that the struggle within the political scene lately has become more than just political games and opposition. Having control over the 2 or 3 regions, a number of law enforcement agencies, and with a practically disintegrating administration, he is now in a very difficult situation. On one hand, he is at the peak of his growth, and on the other, he has used up all of the human and organizational resources. On Friday, the presidential advisor Yermuhamet Yirtizbayev, in his interview to Guljan.org, was carefully avoiding the questions about the change of power, the election of a new president and the upcoming fall. Instead of the important names and allusions of his high awareness, the government official gets away with the standard excuse, saying that all the political decisions will be made by the national leader himself. The president and the parliamentary party is to decide whether there will be a change of government. Echoes of unofficial confrontation leaked into the internet. Recorded telephone conversation with the voices of 2 men bargaining resemble Aslan Musin and ex-governor of Almaty Vyacheslav Karpunov. Opponents officially addressing to one another make it all the more credible. The conversation becomes more intense upon mentioning the names of the political opponents Mukhtar and Timur. This isn't just a game, but a serious fight between these people. It's a real battle using various resources and different forces. That's what I wanted for you to understand. One thing I guarantee on my behalf is that I will always be with you and will not let anyone. I can guarantee you that. Behind-the-scenes struggle has already crossed the line, and that caused the intense reshuffle in the government, says former Senator Walikhan Kaysarov. Moreover, Nursultan Nazarbayev himself doesn't know who will be assigned to certain positions. Instead, he has to improvise, says the politician. Kaysarov claims that Akorda doesn't exclude the fact that all the protest actions, riots and problems at the borders could be caused by almighty Aslan Musin. This man doesn't take the rest of them as his competitors. He simply considers them as the obstacles on his way to the throne. I believe that the president must have felt it, or at least he should have done that a long time ago. According to Kaysarov, the ex-governor of Atarau region, Bergedis Karif, is not only a member of Musin's team, but allegedly the treasurer, hence the financial stability followed by his resignation. They basically pulled the plug on the head of the president's administration. The media speculated on another version as well, that Rizkaliyev may be involved in organization of the unrest in Zhanaozen and even preparation for a coup. According to unofficial data from socialismkz.info, brother of the ex-governor could have sent the representatives of criminal world to Zhanaozen, but he was stopped on the way. The website brings out the conclusion. Should this information be confirmed, it will raise the issue of retrial for politician Vladimir Kozlov in particular, who is currently on trial for Zhanaozen tragedy.
A new prosecutor was appointed in Atarau region. Kalamjan Takizbayev was appointed instead of Saifullo Kemalov. Reasons for the staff reshuffling were voiced by the general prosecutor and chief of financial police, who discovered large-scale embezzlement of assets in the sectors of state procurement and privatization of state property. More details in the next report.
Atarau region is now officially in the center of corruption scandal. The 2-week rumors about a sensational dismissal of the ex-head of the region, Birgiris Kaliyev, and detention of some officials have reasonable grounds. The general prosecutor, Askat Daubayev, and the head of the financial police, Rashid Tusubekov, have arrived in the region. They've accused the administration of embezzling large funds in the sectors of public procurement and state assets privatization. I will mention just some facts of embezzlement. LLP Oil Snapstroy won the tender for public procurement for over $133 million. LLP Atarau Inj Dorstroy for $133 million. LLP Atarau Kurlis for $127 million. Judging by this list, recent talks about companies' audit immediately after the dismissal of the region's governor were not groundless. The auditors from Astana confirmed the fact that the companies received nearly $1 billion from the budget funds. Mismatch has also been found in privatization sector. Gas infrastructure is of strategic importance for the region's population and life support of the region's center and 6 districts. We've found out that it was illegally privatized at the price of 15 times as cheap as its real cost. Salimjan Nakbayev, the former deputy head of Atarau region, turned out to be the initiator of all criminal cases. He was earlier convicted of arbitrariness. His appeal to the president was heard. The General Prosecutor's Office made his conviction illegal. It was qualified by the court as a criminal offense without proper prosecutorial supervision. Thus, I made a protest to the Supervisory Board of the Supreme Court on August 14, 2012. I hope the Supreme Court will soon deliver a fair and legal judgment for Salimjan Nakbayev. Following Birgiris Kaliyev's dismissal, a group of deputies and social activists made a statement. They listed all his services in the development of the region and made it clear that they would not allow to ruin his reputation. We impulsively signed under our statement. We didn't mean any harm. We've always been in the president's team. We support the president's policy and we're always with the president. The recent meetings have proved it. Now some deputies and members of Noratan Party regret supporting Rizkaliyev. Others even deny their signatures in the statement. Regional prosecutor Saifullah Kemalov was dismissed. Galimjan Tagishbayev, a former head of Department of the General Prosecutor's Office, was appointed to fill his position. The heads of the Department of Internal Affairs, Financial Police and the Department of National Security Committee were all dismissed.
The year 2012 was practically a failure for Kazakh farmers. Because of severe heat and drought, almost 600,000 acres of wheat were destroyed. West Kazakhstan region was hit the worst with 137,000 acres of land destroyed. Karaganda region with 30,000 acres, with a similar situation in Kostanay and Akmalai regions. It is planned to finish the harvest in mid-September. However, farmers say that this year they will be able to collect only 10 million tons of wheat at best. There's almost nothing to collect in the crop fields of Aktobe region with the record low yield of 3 tons per acre. Farmers are about to go bankrupt. Some of the crops did not even come up due to sun heat that burned everything. 90% of crops in Aktobe region and West Kazakhstan region died. 7 districts of Kostanay and 6 districts of Akmalai regions had significant loss in crops. Many farmers sowed the fields with grain, and even though it came up, there is nothing to collect since the plants did not produce grain. It is what they call atmospheric drought. The unbearable sun heat killed the last hopes of Pavlodar region farmer Tatyana Shaloput. Throughout the whole summer, the region saw not a single raindrop, and as a result, grain, millet, and sunflower fields show almost no yields. The farmers' forecasts are not promising. That is, if during the good years, grain yields in Pavlodar region used to reach up to 2.5 tons per acre, while this fall, this figure will be 10 times less. This means that, similar to other farmers, Tatyana will not return the money spent on sowing. Her only hope is insurance that will cover the loss. Tatyana Shaloput doesn't even consider other types of financial aid, since, for instance, the prolongation of current loans would be too costly and time-consuming for her. In some way, the prolongation of the loan is the same process that you go through to receive the loan. That means they give you a list of documents that you have to collect to apply for the loan. In addition, they require a collateral if you want a loan. The presidential administration is well aware of the emergency situation caused by the severe drought. At the end of July, President Nazarbayev informed the Minister of Agriculture about upcoming low yields of crops caused by the drought. Thus, he ordered him to monitor the price of grain, which is the first step in such scenario with the drought. The head of state ordered us to timely prepare for the upcoming crop collecting season and give assistance to our farmers who fell victims to the drought. The farmers on the fields complain that these are just words since they haven't seen any assistance yet. Our government does not help its farmers just like governments in other states. Take, for example, Russia, where I personally witnessed how an emergency situation was announced in Orenburg region, and the authorities wrote off the fields inflicted by the drought and owned by the farmers. For every 1 acre of such field, the farmers received a compensation in the amount of $46, which would be great compensation in our case. The government is not planning to write off the debts of farmers despite the critical situation with the drought. The farmers will receive only extension for their loans. However, it is not going to save the farmers since many of them haven't recovered from the 2010 drought. To recall, a similar emergency situation took place in Aktobe region in 2010, the year when over 70% of crops fell victims to drought. It seems to me that there are several solutions to this issue, and above all, it is insurance. The insurance companies have to cover the farmers' loss if their yields were below normal or were absent at all, but it is necessary to give them loans for sowing the next year. However, as you just heard, the loans are issued under 12 to 14% interest rates, while the state gives money to Kazagro under 0.01%, in other words, almost free. At the moment, half of the grain fields are already harvested and only 2 weeks left until the end of the harvesting season. According to forecasts of Ministry of Agriculture, about 13 million tons of grain crops will be harvested this year. Chairman of AUL Party Gani Kaliyev, who keeps a close contact with the farmers, states that it will not be more than 10 million tons. The internal demand for grain is around 8 million tons per year, given that nearly 27 million tons, a record number, were harvested in 2011, and if it is true, then the state should not be worried about grain shortage. According to statistics, we still have overstock of grain, which is about 8.7 million tons. I hope they do have this overstock, and I also hope that the oligarchs who own large silos and granaries are not lying about it, because I've heard rumors that despite the government's ban on sales of grain, many have it sold. And if they did not sell it abroad, kept it here, this year we should be fine with the stocks that we have. The main hope is set on the North Kazakhstan region, where, unlike in other regions, the harvesting machines are running non-stop on the fields. It was hot throughout the summer, almost no rain, but farmers are happy with harvest. In some parts of the region, they collect 3 tons per acre. The farmers in our district are harvesting more than 2 tons per acre, which came as a surprise to us. In addition, we are observing high prices for grain, which will be not less than $300. Thus, I believe that our farmers will be quite happy. Drought is only the beginning of problems, since the poor yields will only cause more financial losses to farmers. In turn, this could lead to price rises for goods. In mid-July, the price of flour rose in 5 regions simultaneously. At the same time, the bakeries complained about the rise of prices for flour and gasoline. However, the Anti-Monopoly Committee did not find these arguments reasonable. Paintbrushes, mops, and brooms instead of pointers, books, and notebooks. This is how teachers of Birlik School of Makhtaral district of South Kazakhstan region start their academic year. They're forced to conduct all repair works on their own. Moreover, they have to finance the works too. The headmaster of the school does not refute the fact and claims that the school has no other choice since the provided finances of over $30,000 are catastrophically low.
The teachers of rural school Birlik literally have no time to prepare for the upcoming academic year. Instead of preparing new curricula and adopting innovations in teaching, they've been picking up new professions while plastering the walls and painting the classroom desks. According to teachers, they were ordered to renovate the classrooms by the administration of the school in the midst of the heat and at their own expense. The head of the school administration abuses, threatens and uses profanity while speaking with us. More than that, we have to work in 45-degree heat to clean the yard and do all the dirty work. How do we protect and educate children if we can't protect our own rights? Our rights are being ignored. The principal's request to clean the premises of the school from weeds sounded more like an order. However, this time the school staff voiced its disagreement. Thus, all those who tried to protest against his order became the victims of sharp criticism of school's manager for maintenance and supply, who was in charge of cleanup of school's yards. It became known that the state allocated funds for the renovation of the school for the first time in 35 years. According to the principal, $317,500 were only enough for the repair of the boiler and replacement of windows, and he had no other options but to allocate these funds for these tasks. I do agree that there was not enough money allocated. We could have painted and whitewashed the classrooms, but then we would have been left with old windows that let drought in. Or we could have plastered and fixed all the walls, but then the classrooms would have been left unheated since the boiler room is too old. Although the school is behind the schedule of renovation, the principal of the school assures that the building will be fully ready for the upcoming academic year. However, the teachers do not share the same view with the principal. The school is not ready for the academic year. The tender for the repair of the school's heating system and replacement of windows was announced only in June 1st, but the developers have not done anything except for the replacement of windows and heating radiators. Actually, the heating radiators worked just fine. It is just we didn't have enough coal this past winter for the heating of the building. Therefore, it was quite cold this winter and we barely could work. I was freezing out myself and was trying to warm up the students. Thus, I didn't really teach since I had to keep them warm. These radiators were fine and I don't know why they had to be replaced. It would have been better if they have renovated the roof. In short, the schools of South Kazakhstan region are far from being ready for the upcoming academic year. Many rural schools of Maktaral district are in the same state as this one. This year, the state allocated over $40 million for the renovation works at the educational institutions. According to reports of sanitary experts and fire inspectors, most of the schools of the region are not ready for the upcoming academic year. Violations were not registered only in 1/10 of all schools, as usually the implications of these unfinished renovations will be faced by the students.
This is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching and see you next week.